40 days after Jesus' birth, Joseph and Mary reach an early but critical moment in Jesus' life. A holy obligation must be met. Old Testament law requires the firstborn to be set apart as holy to God. The child that has been given by God must be offered back to God, or else an offering made in their place. And it sounds odd, I know. We don't really have anything quite like it in our own culture. But I think we know something about those moments, what it feels like to have to offer our children up to God, whether we like it or not. There are moments in all of our lives, as parents and as children, when it becomes clear, sometimes quite painfully, that children do not really belong to their parents. And of course, parents and children share a very special bond, but it is not absolute. It's a bond that must thin over time to the point of breaking sometimes for a child to become what God has created them to be, to do what God has called them to do. Poignant moments when we realize that our children do not really belong to us. And you all know those moments. I'll never forget when Gresham was only 6 weeks old and hospitalized with an extremely high fever for what the doctors feared was meningitis. I remember a friend coming to the hospital to pray over him, and Kim holding him as she sang, "You Are My Sunshine," as tears ran down her face. God had given Gresham to us, but in another sense, he wasn't ours. We had to acknowledge that and offer him up to God. He belonged to God, as he always will, to work his will in him as he pleases. And our lives are filled with many such moments. When a child takes their first step, the day they board the school bus by themselves for the very first time, high school graduation, leaving home for college, a wedding, a move across the country, and the list goes on. It reminds me of the poem On Children by Khalil Gibran. He writes, "And the woman who held a babe against her bosom said, 'Speak to us of children.' And he said, 'Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. And though they are with you, yet they belong not to you. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. You may house their bodies, but not their souls. For their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow, which you cannot visit even in your dreams. You may strive to be like them, but seek not to make them like you. For life goes not backwards nor tarries with yesterday. You are the bows from which your children as living arrows are sent forth." The presentation of Jesus at the temple is more than a rote ceremony. There is a demand to be met, and so a decision to be made. Exactly who does Jesus belong to? I'm sure that by this point, Joseph and Mary are deeply in love with the baby Jesus, just like we are all in love with our own newborn children. They immediately capture our hearts. We instantly fall in love with them. But But Jesus wasn't given to Joseph and Mary for their personal happiness or to fulfill their dreams. As Gabriel had announced to Mary months earlier, Jesus is Son of the Most High. He has a mission and purpose Joseph and Mary could hardly imagine in their wildest dreams. As the elderly prophet Simeon proclaimed that day, Jesus is the light of the world, a light to enlighten the nations, the glory of your people, Israel. But that light will reveal the shadow that fills the hearts of men. And Simeon explains that some will be opposed to the light, and Mary's heart will be pierced. What mother wants to hear that? She can't possibly know what that means at this point. But she begins to realize it as Jesus begins his public ministry. He shakes things up. People of status and power feel threatened. They grumble. They oppose him. They even begin to plot his murder. And Mary's tempted to take Jesus back for herself. In Mark chapter 3, the crowds around Jesus are so thick that he and his disciples weren't even able to eat. And when Jesus' family heard about it, they went out to restrain him, for people were saying he's gone out of his mind. Or as the King James puts it, he is beside himself. It sounds like Jesus has lost the plot. So Mary and Jesus' brothers go to bring him back. And when he's told that they're looking for him, he says, "Who are my mother and my brothers?" And looking at those who sat around him said, "Here are my mother and my brothers. Whoever does the will of God is my brother and my sister and my mother." Mary wants him back. She wants him to remain hers, her son. But there's no going back. Jesus never really belonged to her at all. He's always belonged to God. And in fact, it is Mary who belongs to Jesus. In the same way, we find it difficult to let Jesus be Jesus. Sometimes we just want it to be Christmas forever and never offer Jesus up to God, to let Jesus be God. We want him to remain in the manger forever, tender and mild. We want to carry him around as a safe and manageable comforter rather than the wild and dangerous light of the world. Too often we ask Jesus to comfort us in the darkness rather than dispel it. We want the tender Jesus who's with us when others wound us, but not the Jesus who shows us how we wound others. We want the mild Jesus who comforts us in our loneliness, but not the Jesus who calls us to befriend the friendless. We want the Jesus who's always ready to forgive us, but not the Jesus who asks us to forgive. But we have to offer Jesus up. We have to offer Jesus back to God, to be who he really is, to fulfill the mission for which he came into the world. To be the light of the world, he must move into the dark places, places we don't want to go, places we don't want to follow. He must cast a light that exposes the shadows in the world and in our own hearts. And though they are with you, yet they belong not to you. You may strive to be like them, but seek not to make them like you. Are you ready for Jesus to be the light of the world rather than just a nightlight in your own darkness? Are you ready to move on from Christmas to what's next? Offering up Jesus this night means understanding that Jesus is too big to fit into your personal agenda. He didn't come to simply offer you consolation or to endorse your plans for your own life. He came to transform your life, to dispel the darkness in you so that you will reflect his light and his glory. Tonight, Jesus is just a baby offered up in the temple, but Lent is just around the corner. Are you ready to join Jesus as he begins his journey to Jerusalem and the cross? Are you ready to carry his light into the dark places of our own souls, into the dark places of our world? We light and carry blessed candles this night to remind us of Jesus' light. And yes, don't get me wrong, we are meant to be comforted by that light. On the dark days of winter that remain, light your candle and remember that a light has entered the world that can dispel all darkness, every heartache, every pain, every injustice that you suffer. But as you experience his light, remember that it is not yours alone. It doesn't belong to you alone. May these candles inspire you and give you courage to carry that light into the world.